give us a minute and we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. Okay, I think we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I can see a question in the chat already about another link. Aditya, if you can just respond to someone about another link and another device. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Namita Mehta from the Red Pen, and we've got Sarah from Imperial College, Palak from King's College, and Veer from St. Andrews. And today we're going to speak about studying in undergraduate admissions in the UK. We've got a presentation ready for you. So we're going to quickly go through the application process. All of us are going to touch upon a different piece of it, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. Please feel free at any point in the presentation to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will answer it, or we will also get to it later. So quick introduction about me. I'm Namita Mehta. I myself have studied in the UK. I went to a boarding school for 2 years where I did my A-levels, and I also did my undergrad and my postgraduate degree in the UK. I studied molecular and cellular biochemistry. So I know this, I have experience studying in a British university myself, and I can say that those 4 years of my life were probably the most transformational for me. So a lot of what I'm going to say is also from experience. I run the Red Pen, which is an independent education counseling firm. And what we do is we help students with their college application process at all rungs of the ladder. So whether you're looking at boarding school admissions or undergrad admissions, postgrad admissions, or MBA admissions, we can help you. And I'll talk a little bit about the Red Pen in a minute, but I'm handing it to Sarah to introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah, and I am the Senior International Recruitment Officer for South Asia and the Middle East at Imperial. I'm really looking forward to presenting to you today and answering some of your questions as well.
Palak?
Yes, hi. So I'm Palak. I'm the International Officer with King's. I am based in India. I look after undergraduate and postgraduate admissions in India, and happy to present to all of you today and take your questions. And I hope this goes useful for you.
Thank you so much, Palak. Veer?
Thank you, Namita. My name is Veer Anand. I work with the University of St. Andrews. And a fun fact, much like Namita, I spent 4 brilliant years studying in the UK myself, and I'm an alum of St. Andrews. So other than a brief stint in London post my undergraduate degree, all I know is St. Andrews. So thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure working with the Red Pen.
Thank you so much, Sarah, Palak, and Veer, for spending this evening with me and helping students understand more about admissions in the UK at the undergrad level. So let's move on. So a little bit about the Red Pen before we get started. Like I mentioned, we've been around for 12 years, and we are an education counseling firm with a global expertise. So we really work with students at all rungs of the ladder and help them with their university admissions. One of our philosophies at the Red Pen is best fit admissions. So it's not only just about getting into a university that is highly ranked, but we really believe in helping you identify a university that is going to be the best fit for you, where you're going to thrive, and where you're going to make the most of your 3 or 4 years there. We've had our students that have worked with us have been admitted to universities in over 15 countries. And we've had students that have applied to a range of different majors, which is different courses. Many of our students have also secured scholarships, and 95% of our students are admitted to one of their top 3 choices. This is just a snapshot of some of the universities that our students are going to attend this year. So many of them are actually in their freshers week or literally just starting their university course. So this is just a representative list. So a little bit about our undergraduate application. So how we look at it is, like I said, it's all really about best fit. We work with students on a very hand-holding strategy. So we work with you to really understand, first of all, we're exploring what you're interested in. We have a personalized session, and then we help you kind of put your best foot forward in the application process. Whether you're looking at applying to universities in the UK, which is what today's session is about, or other destinations like the US or Canada, we really get you to understand what you need to put in these applications and how you can put the best narrative forward so that the admissions teams can evaluate your application in the best way. All right, so let's get into it. I know we've got an hour, so I'm not gonna, and I know many of you have questions, so please put all your questions in the Q&A. Veer, Sarah, Palak, or I will answer them, and there is definitely going to be ample time at the end to ask more questions. All right, so let's get into this. So studying in the UK, the main thing that is the main component that is the most important component in the UK admissions process for other universities as well and other destinations is your data. That is why that is at the bottom of this triangle here. Your data is the most important because universities want to make sure that you're going to be successful academically when you attend their programs. So what are they looking for in the UK? UK universities want to see what your predicted grade is going to be. They like to see what you've achieved in grade 10 or year 11, and they want to make sure that you have the required subjects for whichever course you want to study. Now, for UK universities, it's very, very black and white. So whichever course you want to apply for, there will be a tab called minimum entry requirements. And if you click on that, it will tell you that we require you to have certain subjects for certain courses. So for example, if you want to study economics, for example, many universities are going to want you to have a high level of maths in whichever curriculum you're studying. If you want to do medicine, then they're going to expect you to have chemistry and or biology. So data is kind of the foundation of your application. They also are going to look to see what you're going to be writing in your personal statement. We're going to cover that in more detail in the latter part of our presentation, but they want to, the personal statement is really an opportunity for you to talk about why you want to study that particular course. In addition to that, one of your teachers or counselors will submit a letter of recommendation where they will talk about how they think you're going to be a good fit for that course. And then, of course, you fill out the application form, which is the UCAS form. And then the university admissions teams will check whether they think you're going to be a good fit or not. So this is essentially the overall application process to the UK. We're going to go through each of these, the data, the personal statement, and the testing. There is some testing in more detail. And Veer, Sarah, and Palak will talk about that. So I won't spend more time on that. But finances. And then, of course, there's living expenses, which are separate. One thing that I want to point out is, living in a place like London is a lot different than living in a place like York. I'll give you my own personal example. So I lived in Oxford and my brother lived in London. And what he paid per rent per week is what I paid per month. So, you can strategize which universities you want to apply for if finances are a concern. In general, humanities and arts courses are a little cheaper. Medicine and STEM programs tend to be a little bit more expensive. So scholarships, unlike the US where there is a need-based scholarships, that concept doesn't really exist in the UK, but there are opportunities for you to apply for scholarships as well. So there's a list here this is just a representative list. There's many more UK universities that offer some scholarships as well. But if you notice, this is tuition scholarship, so you would still have to pay for living expenses as well. And this is just a representative list. And usually, sometimes you're automatically considered for these scholarships, and sometimes you apply after you get the offer as well. So a little bit about the post-study work visa. This was reintroduced after this wasn't the opportunity to stay in the UK and work for up to 2 years after you finish your degree. It is something that's possible now. So there is an ROI, there is an opportunity for you to stay back and get a job and live there for 2 years after you've graduated. That's called the graduate route visa in the UK. And most students will avail of that opportunity, and they have to get a job after they graduate. All right, I'm going to hand it to Palak now, who's going to talk a little bit about college and course selection.
Great, thanks, Namita. Can you change the slide for me, please? Right, so college and course selection, often in my experience that I speak to students, is it could get a bit overwhelming if the students make this mistake of keeping this towards, the final year that they're entering into. But so King's alone has about 250 courses to choose from. And of course, if you're looking at 5 universities for your UCAS, it's about 1,000 number that we play from. But it's definitely a plus if we have these opportunities, if we kind of play it sensibly. So my set of slides will just be about what factors broadly do you consider while choosing your university and your college. And at the end, I'll just sum it up for you, etc. So like Namita started, UK universities are pretty transparent. They pretty much will state very clearly what they need. It's all there on the website as well. So qualification subjects, exam grades are very, very important to us. So we will need the minimum entry requirements that is mentioned on predicteds, and of course, then in the final examination that is listed. So while you're choosing in a college, very, very, very important to realistically see if you will be able to meet those requirements. I often see students making this mistake of getting too aspirational or too dreamy about all their 5 choices on UCAS. And when the results come out, unfortunately, they do not get any of those offers. So please be a little more sensible and check each university's website that you're looking at, specifically the course pages, to meeting both the criteria, which is the overall criteria, irrespective of the curriculum that you're doing, and also the subject-specific criteria. So, for example, for most courses at King's, you will need a 35 overall from IB and a 776, and it is very, very important and essential to meet both these criteria. So it'll be, again, similar for different set of boards, etc. So very, very important that you meet that. An admission test could or could not be a part of the selection process for certain universities. So, for example, King's does not have an admission test as such for any other program except medicine and law. So for law, we will need the LNAT, and for medicine, we need the UCAT. Some universities in the UK could also ask for BMAT. Some universities will have an interview process, etc. All of this will, again, be on the university's website. GMAT, GRE, SATs, most universities in the UK don't need it, but some could possibly ask for it, etc. Some will optionally consider it. Again, these things are on the website, so please double check. It is very, very essential to thoroughly read the course page of the universities that you're looking at, because you will discover some information that essentially is going to be very useful in selecting the exact course for yourself. Interviews, like I said, for King's, we only have it for medicine set of courses, but some universities could also have different formats of interviews, either panel interviews or some other formats of interviews, video recording, etc. So be double sure about those as well. All applications to for the UK universities goes through UCAS. So I'm sure, all of you who are attending a session today will have some idea about the UCAS. So I often tell them, not just an application platform. It usually has a great set of information that's already prepared as a homework for you to look at while choosing courses, universities. They offer compare, contrast different universities. They'll have a filter based on a certain set of predefined criteria, etc. They've already did that bit of a homework for you, and as we all are very smart generation these days, it's going to be really helpful as a presented information to you. So please look at UCAS, research through different universities, research through different course options. I often see students making this mistake of just applying for the most popular courses because either their cousins got into that course, or the school seniors got into that course. And a lot of times they haven't even researched the university page to know that there are similar options that exist. So my main caveat here would be the more popular the course is, the more competitive it gets. I see, for example, if I give you a business management example at King's, it's an extremely popular course, which makes it extremely, extremely competitive. I've seen students getting rejected with a 42 predicted for business as well, right? But an alternate could be a management course in modern languages, right? So you study management, but there's also an additional component, you study a modern language from scratch. Now, you will only know this if you've done that level of research for yourself, right? So which is why it is important to do it. And I often suggest students, the moment you enter class 11th, you should have a journal or a diary maintained where you put down all your passwords, all your portals and passwords, all your personal statement researches, what you're doing, start building your personal statement, college specific research, etc. If you've researched about 10 different universities and you then boil down to 5 different universities, very, very important to put the pros and cons, etc. because this actually takes a couple of months to do it. And when you're actually at the end stage of applying for a UCAS application, you might even forget why you chose a particular university, right? So maintain a diary or maintain an Excel sheet where you put all the pros and cons and any important information, any particular subject that particular university needs for your course choice, etc. All of that information is important. So this is now on the screen that you see is a snapshot of how the course page at King's looks like. And this is the King's website. So just to help you navigate this, if you see, the moment you enter the course page, you will see all different curriculums that is presented with minimum entry requirements. Just the reason is just to show you that it's very, very, very transparently given as to what we need. So all eco-specific courses, while like Namita said, do need maths in the UK. So it'll clearly be mentioned there. If you don't have maths, please don't apply, because we're actually putting this across for your ease, because we know these subjects are quant heavy subjects. So we need you to have a stronger grip on these subjects. State board applications, please double check if you're a state board applicant, because a lot of universities in the UK don't really accept state boards as a direct entry. King's, for example, you'll have to do international foundation year, which is an additional 1 year if you're a state board student, etc. You can see with bullet points, there are specific things mentioned with specific set of universities, but the conclusion of this whole slide actually remains that it's very, very important to double check the course page and double check the specific subjects requirements as well. So how to choose your 5 UK colleges? Now, college research, what I find in my experience, could be pretty exciting and adventurous as well, right? So there's lots and lots of information given, and we are very lucky to have access to a lot of resources. Like when we were in college, we weren't blessed with these kind of opportunities, right? So it's just broadly, I'll cover these points and I'll also add some more other points at the end of the presentation. So curriculum and grades is very, very, very important. Most UK universities, specifically the Russell Group universities, are pretty strict with their minimum entry requirements. So you have to meet or exceed those entry requirements. It is very important to also check if your course is available at that particular university. I often see students and a lot of students come to me also that they really want to go to King's, but if they're not getting the course choice, they still want King's, etc. In my personal opinion, I think course choice is more important than the university choice, and this could actually be debatable as well. But in my experience, because you have to study that particular course for 3 years and you have to build your career and employment on that, then it is important that you study what your interest aligns with. You can always come back to do a master's in your dream college if you don't get into your undergrad degree, right? So very important to check the course majors. Now, UK colleges have a very structured approach to curriculum. It's not like US where there is a buffet of course modules and you can pick and choose and build like a liberal arts concept. Although UK is stepping up towards some liberal art courses and those options exist, but it's not very commonly available. So for King's also, we will have a certain interdisciplinary courses like physics with probably say philosophy and things like that, eco with management, all of those things, but it's not very widely available. So if it is on the website, then there is access to it. You can't particularly build and choose it. And also most of the times you can't even change your course in the second year. So it's very important that you make a very, very valid choice with course. So double check all the course options that is available for what you're looking at. So for example, if you're looking at eco, so we will have eco and management, politics, philosophy, and economics, etc. Check out all the possible options, go through the course modules, year 1, year 2, year 3, what is there. Different universities might offer the exact same course, but what they actually teach and how they teach will be different, right? Now, what they actually teach will be given in the course modules, and how they teach it is actually a better way to find this out is to speak to current students, either through the Unibuddy chat feature or LinkedIn, speak to them, etc. So that kind of a research is also important. Double check if they need an entrance test for what you're looking at. Some universities, for example, will need a UCAT, or some will need a BMAT. Law, for example, we will definitely need LLAD, any additional English language test if they need. So for King's, usually we will exempt it for IB level students, but some universities exempt it for certain CBSE students as well. Some absolutely don't exempt it. So you have to double check all of these details as well. And yeah, check if there's an interview. If there is an interview, they'll usually also give you details on how to prepare for it. So double check that also as a part of your research process. Entry requirements, I think I've already covered this. It has to be grade and subject specific. So it'll give you, if it's a 766, it'll give you on the website that a 7 needs to be in this particular subject, and the other 7.6 could be anything, right? And minimum entry requirements, like predicted grades are very, very important. So we look at class 10th and 12th predicted, and of course the final, if you get a conditional offer. We don't really look at class 11 grades, but this could be different for different universities as well. So also a lot of students tell me that we did not do well in class 11, but we are looking at class 12 now. So, but if the university places a certain emphasis in your class 11 stage, that will be important, right? So UK follows the concept of conditional offers. Now, broadly, there are 2 conditions that is given. So one is the academic condition, second is the English language condition. English language, of course, is not given if we don't need it from you, or if you've already submitted your IELTS or the TOEFL or the PTE score. Majority, it's an academic condition. Now, the academic condition could possibly, of course, be the overall condition, and also a certain subject condition, right? Now, how do you boil down to those 5 choices in the UCAS puzzle, right? Now, it could be very, very tempting even if I'm applying as a student, it could be very tempting for me to put all my dream choices, etc. But it's usually, I've seen in my career so far, it's usually not a sensible choice to get so overconfident, because every year we see either A-level results will have a fiasco, or IB will kind of, this year, I mean, the last year we saw IB was very, very curtailed with their results, etc. So I usually suggest students to put one with their dream. So if you are expecting a predicted of say 35, put something which needs like something above a 35, 3 with targeted cell, and 1 with safety, something like a 32, which is expected, which is so that once you get an offer from these universities, then you are at a choosing stage, rather than regretting later that why did you not have a safety net cell, right? So we can move with slides now. Yeah, so I'll just sum it up with what, before I hand it over to Veer, as to what you should look at about choosing a university. Now, there are macro as well as micro factors as well. Macro, of course, you can look at broad rankings, but like Namita said at the start, it's actually about a better fit. And a lot of students at this age, they don't understand, but they actually come to universities, they understand what we said and why we said it. So right, so I think I'll cover these points later then, because we are a little short on time. So I'll hand it over to Veer now. Yeah.
Thank you, Palak. No, it's always really interesting actually when I listen to colleagues speak, and as a management and economics student myself, I have some good news for those who don't have maths, but given the flexibility that Scotland has and St. Andrews has, we actually don't require maths. So it's always nice to see and compare and contrast, the requirements and why certain universities do make those decisions. So it really sets up the stage really well for me. So thank you, Palak. I think when we talk about the personal statement, and the first question you get is what is it about? And I think the answer is in the title itself. It's personal. It's meant to be about you. So when we talk about competitive universities, particularly in we've got 3 of the most competitive that we have. A lot of times, most students applying for courses are meeting those standard grade requirements. And unlike the United States and the Common App system, where you have multiple different essays to actually talk about yourself, and it's more subjective in that nature, in the United Kingdom, really, it's just a personal statement. And so if you take out the reference, you're really talking about half your application in that sense. So it's very important. It's read by multiple teams, multiple readers will read your personal statement. And for competitive universities, it can be a make or break for you. And so really do focus on making sure that you redraft, draft multiple times and put your best foot forward. So personal statement is all about you. It's an insight into your character, what your interests are, your interests not just in the subject area, but outside that as well. The skills that you possess and how you bring that into the classroom is important for us as well. So really what we look for is not a perfect piece of work. What we look for is someone who's being able to articulate themselves in a correct manner. So, make sure that you check your grammar, make sure that your sentences aren't too long, make sure you're not citing the same books that come up in the top 5 economics books on Amazon or Google. The amount of people who apply for economics and talk about free economics or donut economics, those are the sort of the first ones that come up. So be creative. There's so much out there today. There's TED Talks, there's YouTube, there's different research journal articles that you can read, different books that you can read. So I think be creative with that and really showcase that academic and non-academic potential that you possess. And just before we move on to the next slide, Namita, I think the way that my our director international really says, it's like I should be able to see you through that personal statement, and that's really what we look for. So when we talk about the details of the personal statement, you're looking at about 47 lines or 4,000 characters, and it really should be about 70% about the subject, about why you want to study this particular subject. And so here again, there's this, I like to contrast it with, the United States as a very popular destination for a lot of you. You don't have an opportunity to talk about yourself and your identity and maybe why you're a good fit for that particular university, but it's all about the subject when it comes to the UK. And so 70% is about the subject, your interest in the subject, subtopics, your passion should come through in that 70%. And what we refer to as super curricular or extracurricular activities which are directly related to your subject, those should be part of that. And I can safely say this because I've worked with Sarah and Palak, but we also want to see a demonstration of reading and you being able to engage with reading as well, and that's really important. So it's not just about internships, but it's about adding that connect to literature as well. So I think just some questions that you might want to ask yourself is really what motivates you to do this course, right? Why should someone who's teaching you this course want to have you in their classrooms? When we talk about fit, that's where it comes in again. And 30% can be about your extracurriculars, your skills, ideally tying back into the subject in some way. If not, then talking about those skills that can be demonstrated in the classroom and really enhance the experience for everyone. So I think a good place to start really is just start making bullet points. So just start writing an essay, which might look like, just everything that you've done, or my journeys in creating an interest in studying psychology, and you sort of just start writing down those details. And it really helps in the drafting process, because sometimes you find after a few drafts that a particular point that you thought was very strong isn't actually coming across in the same way. And so you can always go back to that draft and pick out those instances and again strengthen that personal statement of yours. So I think next slide, please, Namita.
Sure.
So I think this talks about just something I mentioned a little bit earlier, but don't cage yourself into templates. I think, remember, anything that you can Google, someone else can Google as well. So if you look at the template and you normally see the same things that tend to come from this region, you'll have a template of, an introduction and then a few internships, and then you have sort of a extracurriculars and a conclusion. It's fairly similar what it looks like, but the amount of times I've seen personal statements that start with, I want to study business because I come from a business family, or, for the longest time, I was interested in studying psychology because my mother studies, is a teacher or a student of psychology. So I think be a little bit more creative than that. I think use different instances. That's obviously what we expect from you. Namita, I think I can continue to go on with the personal statement. There's always a lot to say, but I'll just conclude with a few things. I always have a little bit of difficulty in saying what a good personal statement looks like, but I can certainly cite a few examples of what maybe we want to avoid in a personal statement. And I think one of the things that you want to avoid is not spending enough time and showcasing research in your subject. Also, remember that the same personal statement is going to go to 5 choices, right? So make sure you don't mention names of universities or titles of courses that's going to indicate that you want to go to a particular place, because it might be good for them, but the others certainly aren't going to look at it favorably. And I think the last point I really want to stress on is, if you're applying for a joint degree, so a combined degree between 2 subjects, it's really important that you spend time talking about those 2 subjects. Don't ignore one subject, or find common trends that you can link the 2 subjects together, because again, if you're applying for that combination, we will look for that. And lastly, I think just bits of detail, and I'll give an example here. So at St. Andrews, for example, we do a course called International Relations, and people don't realize it's different to politics, and there's a subtle difference between the two. And often people will just talk about politics and not really spend time talking about international relations, or they'll talk about sports psychology, which maybe is something that we don't do. So again, if you do your research, you spend time doing it, I think you can avoid a lot of these mistakes. But just a few instances that came to mind of things that you might want to avoid.
Thank you so much, Veer. That was very insightful. I just want to reiterate one of his points, that just remember, everyone, that the same personal statement is seen by all the colleges that you apply to. It's not mentioned on any of these slides, and that's why I want to reiterate that. So again, when you're choosing your course, we recommend that you choose the same course in all the 5 universities. So if you're applying for, say, something like a PPE of the philosophy, politics, and economics, Veer mentioned that you should talk equally about all the 3 subjects that you want to study. So typically identifying PPE in other universities, in all the 5 universities, makes sense as well. So it's not like the US, where there are supplement essays or essays that are specifically asked for by certain universities. Only Cambridge has some of their own questions that they ask you to answer after you submit the application. But otherwise, the personal statement is seen by all the colleges, which is a good thing in a way as well. So you don't have that much work to do. But it also means that you cannot speak specifically about a particular university or a particular course unless it's the same one that you're applying to in all the 5 universities. Thank you so much, Veer, for that. I'm now going to hand it to Sarah, who's going to speak a little bit about interviews and tests.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And yeah, I love hearing Veer talk more about the personal statement, and he definitely echoes exactly what we're saying in terms of that focus and how to demonstrate that additional interest. So it's my turn to talk a little bit about entrance tests and assessment tests that may be included, and then followed by that talking a little bit more about interviews. And it's been great to see some of you already submitting questions about interviews and admissions tests. So you've already done your research, which is great to see, and I'm hopefully going to give you a bit more information about this process. So as Palak and Veer have said, once you have completed your UCAS form, you've written that strong personal statement, your teachers have written your teacher's reference, your application is then going to be sent via UCAS to your 5 choices. So this is when we receive your application, and the university's admissions teams are going to be reviewing the applications that you have spent a long, hard time crafting. And so we are going to spend the time reviewing that. Now, for many universities, that is when they will start making offers to students who they deem would be a good fit for their university. So not all university courses or all universities themselves will require you to take additional assessment tests. So that's really, really important. What I am going to be talking today is about for selected universities and selected courses. For example, medicine courses across the UK will require an additional assessment test and interview, but for many courses and universities, there won't be this additional step. But if you are considering the universities and courses that are listed here and others that may be included, I'm here to give you a little bit of breakdown of the assessment tests. Now, what you can see from this chart here is, unfortunately for you, there is no one set test for each course. So part of your research, part of what Palak was talking about in terms of understanding what is required, needs to come before you submit that application. Because as you can see here, each course and each university may be asking for different tests. So it's important to be aware at an earlier stage what the deadlines, what the additional tests, whether they are external tests, so certain tests that you can see here, and I'm going to use medicine as an example. You can see here that the BMAT is required. And for other UK universities, King's, for example, will ask for the UCAT. And these are external tests, which have external deadlines and need to be taken outside of the UCAS process. So again, being aware of the set deadlines so that you can apply by this and adhere to the deadline, that is really, really important. Now, in terms of the assessment test that you'll be looking at, why do we do it? Well, as Namita mentioned, as Veer mentioned, you only have one personal statement for all 5 choices. So the chance to provide this assessment test, to provide this interview, gives us some supplementary information, how we can assess your relevant skills and aptitude for that course. Again, we receive applications from students around the world, not just taking A-levels or IB or CBSE, but a range of different curriculums. And for certain courses and universities, we want to assess students in a way that puts you on an equal footing. So we get the chance to really see how different students are looking at problems and how they're receiving that information. So some things I want to highlight in terms of that assessment is being aware of the external deadlines, looking and reviewing the courses and seeing which dates I need to submit an application for and when do I need to take the tests. Being aware if it is an external test like the BMAT or the LNAT for law, or whether it is an internal test, whether that's the internal tests for physics at Imperial or other courses at other universities that have, once you've submitted your application through UCAS, for strong applicants, we would then invite you to that test. Again, thinking about the deadlines to take the test for something like the STEP. Some of these tests may be included in your offer. So you don't actually need to take the test before you apply, but it is something to be aware of when you are looking to meet the offer conditions, making sure that you apply and take the STEP in adequate time so that you can receive that unconditional offer when the STEP results come out. A bit of the some tips in terms of the assessments. Really look at practice papers. Help familiarize yourself with the format of the tests. Get some practice doing some problem solving, looking at how you approach problems. Again, whatever curriculum you're doing, try looking at a different curriculum. If it's maths or physics, familiarize yourself with the way that other curriculums approach problems, as depending on the university, they may be utilising different ways of approaching maths, physics, or chemistry, for example. It might be utilising different novels or areas of literature if it's English. So really take a look at different and broaden your horizons in terms of what is being looked at. And for another piece of advice, just finally for the admissions tests themselves, is trying doing them under timed conditions. Often what takes students by surprise is actually the short amount of time that is required to complete a set amount of questions. So it's really advisable that you take the time to do a practice test in formal timed conditions and make sure that you're aware of the style and format of that admissions test. Again, very similar to the assessments are the interviews, which you can see here. Again, not all courses or universities will, but we will have some set guidance for you. So in the next slide, some really broad overviews here of the do's and don'ts in terms of the courses. Now, as Namita and Veer mentioned, that one personal statement goes to all 5 courses and university choices, but the interview is just with that one university. So this is your real chance to look over what you mentioned in your personal statement, be familiar with what you included. Again, for some of you, you will have been drafting your personal statement for many, many months, and you'll submit that in the coming few weeks or months, but you may not be called to interview until as late as March. So refamiliarize yourself with personal statements. Read around the subject that you're interested in. Remember, if you've been called to interview, you will be speaking with a leader, an academic, professionals in that field, and they want to know why you're interested in that subject. Why do you want to spend the next 3 to 6 years in that subject area? Trying to be to maintain eye contact, to really engage with the academics. Again, some of the formats of the interviews will be online, and we understand that that will be a little bit difficult in terms of eye contact, but try where possible to emphasize why you're interested in that course and why you're interested in that particular university as well. In an interview, and a question that I received just briefly before in the chat was, will it be a more personal focused interview and more academic? Now, what we encourage is for each university and for each department, they will have a different format. But more common than anything in UK universities is an academic problem-solving focused interview. And especially at a university like Imperial, we will be looking to understand how you solve problems. Now, whatever topic that you are researching into, understanding and breaking down the topics and questions, speaking out loud and practicing how you solve problems out loud is a really good skill to practice ahead of that interview. Our academics want to know not necessarily that you will get the right answer, but we want to know that you have the right way of approaching a particular problem. And don't be shy to ask the interviewer a question at the end. But my only caution with this is make sure it is a well-researched question and not something that can be easily found on the website. Some don'ts, just to kind of go over here, saying that you know the answer without actually forming and expressing how you've reached it. Trying to kind of not engage with the academic and kind of keeping silent may cause the academic to wonder what you are thinking or how you're approaching things. So making sure that you're talking through and explaining the steps of what you're saying. And if for any reason you need some clarification, don't just assume. Really ask for clarity. This is your chance to really take the time and think about that subject. This is your time. And my final piece of advice, especially for any interviews or asking for internal assessments, is be confident in that. We don't interview everyone. We don't ask everyone to do these assessments. This is a great step for you. We're interested to know more. So be confident in that and make sure that you're taking this opportunity to read over what you've written, read over why we've called you to interview, and really enjoy the process, because this is forming the next stage of your journey to higher education.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Sarah. It was really thorough. It just gave a really detailed overview of testing and interviews. And I just want to reiterate one point before we move on, that not all UK universities ask you for tests or interviews, but the ones that do, they take it very seriously. So like Sarah said, don't miss the deadline to register for these tests, because if you've missed it, you've missed it. And certain courses like, say, law or medicine, you do have to have that test. You can't not submit a BMAT score or a UCAT score. There was a question about whether BMAT is widely accepted or UCAT. I mean, certain universities ask you to sit the UCAT and some ask you to sit the BMAT. And if you're applying to a mixture of them, you do have to sit both of the exams. The BMAT is kind of moving out. Is that something you want to comment on, Sarah? Do you know what Imperial is going to do next year?
So at the moment, we haven't released what we're going to be doing. That is still to be confirmed. But yes, this year it remains the BMAT, and we will be announcing for the 2025 shortly. I believe once this application cycle has finished, we'll be announcing for the next academic year.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly We're going to move on to questions now. You can see on this slide, there's my information, Veer, Sarah, and Palak. Please feel free to take our email addresses and email us if you have any specific questions, but there's been some fantastic questions in the chat that Sarah, Veer, Palak, and I have been answering. I'm going to pick a couple of them to answer live now. Okay, so there seems to be a lot of questions about IB maths, about whether it's important, whether a student has AA or AI at HL. So maybe if Veer, Sarah, and Palak can comment on this for the different courses, I'm going to ask Veer to talk about it first. These are students that are doing the IB diploma program, and there's options for you to take an at high level in AA mathematics or in a high level in AI or even standard level. Does the university mind which one you take and for which courses? So maybe Veer first, then Sarah, then Palak.
Yeah, thanks, Namita. I think this ties into another question I'd answered in the Q&A. And I think it's very clear on the particular subject page of the website. So if we do require an AA or an AI in a particular high level math subject, and that tends to be a requirement more for the sciences or mathematics or computer science, it tends to be in kind of those subjects, then it will be mentioned over there. And if it isn't mentioned, then of course we can't disadvantage you in that sense. But what I would say is keep a few things in mind. For example, even if there isn't a mathematics requirement, let's say for economics or management, but again, it is a subject that is going to have econometrics, it's going to have statistics. So I think just a person should be prepared that you might be looking at some level of math, but I think it's very clear on the websites whether or not we require it.
And just to yeah, just a second, that's very much similar. On each of our pages, we state whether we require AA or AI, or even whether AA is preferred, or as Veer said, it's based on an equal footing, and we're very transparent about that on the website.
For us, for engineering, maths and physics, we need only AA maths at HL levels, and rest either AA or AI is absolutely okay. And this is also clearly mentioned on the website, which is condensing the information here.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Palak. I just want to reiterate that this is really not very negotiable. I think there's a question here about if my school doesn't offer it, or you know, I've done AI and not AA. I mean, unfortunately, in the UK, the universities want to make sure that you can hit the ground running when you join the university for the particular course that you're applying for that requires the maths. So there isn't really any way around that. If any of you want to comment on that, because in lots of students, even at the Red Pen, they're like, oh well, you know, they're asking for HLAA at 6, but I've got HLAI at 7. Can I still apply? And I'm like, no, you can't, because they're asking for HLAA. But you know, so just remember that these requirements aren't very flexible. If Veer, Sarah, and Palak, if you just want to kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, can I jump in here? Because it's something that I get asked a lot, and Imperial is probably one of the most inflexible universities in terms of entry requirements, with many of our students exceeding the grade requirements. And the reason that we do this, we have these very structured entry requirements, is to ensure that students enjoy it and are ready for the world of Imperial when they arrive. And just to really emphasize, if you are not predicted to achieve the minimum, you would struggle in an Imperial environment. And we want to make sure that students who are here, they are enjoying their time. And part of that is being able to keep up with the academic rigor and demands of the course. So we set those to make sure that students who are joining will enjoy the course. And I think that's a really important thing to mention, is that we're doing it for that reason, for the students.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah, for just reiterating that. Veer, there's a question for you that just came up about scholarship opportunities at St. Andrews, if you want to answer that for international students.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a range of scholarships. I think it starts off at about a few £1,000 as an accommodation award, and then it goes up to a fully funded international scholarship that you can apply for as well. The important thing to note from our perspective, and I think scholarships will be very different, it's going to be specific to the university, but most of our scholarships are merit based. And so once you apply, you can then apply for scholarships. So we don't automatically consider you for scholarships. You need to put in a separate application, and then you're judged on the basis of the application, which could include an additional essay that you need to write, a reference that you might have to submit. And so we look at a different way of doing things really when it comes to the scholarships. There are some need-based scholarships as well, but it tends to be more merit-based. So yeah, there's a big range and a lot in between. But what I will say is something that you said at the beginning. We do have these scholarships, but it shouldn't be confused with the model that's used in Northern America. The UK is a lot, less open, and it can't give you those 60, 70, 80% scholarships that maybe the United States can. So I think it's just to put that in perspective. We do have them, but again, they're probably smaller in number than what you're likely to see in Northern America. But they are there, and I would encourage everyone to apply because it doesn't impact your admissions in any way. So it's a completely different process when reading your application.
Thank you so much, Veer. A similar question came up for you, Sarah, about scholarships at Imperial.
So at Imperial, we have very limited international scholarships. We have an IB Excellent Scholarship, which is a partial scholarship for those students who are maintaining very high predicted grades. And this is a partial scholarship of £5,000 a year to certain students. But again, at an international level, our internal scholarships for international students is very limited. We encourage students to look for external funding primarily.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. Another question that I've been seeing like a theme of is about whether universities assess grade 10 results. So students that are doing IGCSE or students that are doing any national curriculum or CBSE grade 10 results, how do you evaluate those? Because those aren't included in the minimum entry requirements. So if a student has got like a few A's, a few B's, and a few C's in their IGCSEs, but have really good predicted for their IB or their A level, does that impact them getting an offer? If we could answer that question. Palak, do you want to go ahead with that first?
Yeah, so we do look at class 10, but these are not deal-breaking grades. I mean, we look at it because, of course, it's also in your UCAS application. For certain schools, like certain departments of the university have seen, they have a certain preference if it's a GCSE and they put it in a separate folder. But overall, they are not. Like overall, the most important grades for us is just the predicted for class 12. Class 11, we don't even look at. And 10th, of course, it is mentioned there. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
Very similar. So for us, they will be seen by the admissions team. It is not something that we have minimum requirements for in the class 10. However, if there are certain grades in particular subjects, so for us STEM subjects, where the grades might be much lower than you are now, if before you were achieving the 60s to 70s in maths and now you're being predicted 95, we would want to know from the teacher's perspective why there has been a jump, because we are using it as evidence that you do have a strength of background in those particular subjects. So we don't have a minimum. However, if there is a big difference between the 10th and the 12th, we'll want to know what has happened in between so that we have that broader picture, and that can be sent through the teacher's reference.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Veer?
Yes, slightly different. We do often ask for the 11th as well. So we can ask for the 10th, 11th, and 12th, and then we look at consistency, progression. And the opposite of what Sarah said is also true. If there's a big dip in the 11th grade, or we see that, then that's something that we can take a look at as well. But there are no sort of grades in terms of those boundaries, but essentially we want to see good consistent level of academic performance in the 10th, and probably looking also closely at mathematics and English in particular. But again, no set benchmarks, but we want to see good progression and consistency.
I think another question has come up that AS levels are considered in the evaluation process, right? Do you look at AS results, Palak?
Not really. I mean, no.
Okay, Sarah?
So again, we're not making an offer based on the AS grades. We're making it based on the final A-level grades. However, again, if there is a significant dip, if you're getting C's in the AS grades and now you're predicted A stars, we'll want to know why that is. But we are making the offer based on your A-level grades.
Okay, lovely. Yeah.
No, I won't waste more time. Very similar to what Sarah said, but I think I covered it in my
Okay.
last answer as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Veer. There's a question about letters of recommendation, which we haven't even touched upon. So I'm just going to ask all of you about the letter of recommendation. UCAS allows one. So do you ask for any additional letters of recommendation? And what exactly are you looking for in the LOR? So Veer, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I seem to get stuck with this topic a little bit. I can see Sarah smiling. We've had this discussion, but Namita, I don't want to get into too many details, but the format of the UCAS reference is likely to change. So what they might change to, rather than a free-flowing essay, is now have these 3 prompts, which will allow the referee to then put in certain answers. So
is that going to happen this year?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and so that's something that maybe the audience, as well as all of you and your colleagues, maybe want to take a look at it. There's a lot of information about it on the UCAS website, but essentially, in my opinion, it makes a personal statement even more important now, because that free-flowing essay that could give a lot of context to a reader, maybe now in that format doesn't allow the same free-flowing way of articulating the context. And so I think that's something that we might want to look at. But coming back to your basic question, it's one reference and that'll come through the UCAS. So I would recommend that it is the counselor or the subject teacher writing it. And just a little myth is I think I get this question a lot. Will it help if the principal wrote it or the head of school wrote it? And no, it should actually be someone who knows you and can write that reference in the right manner. So it doesn't matter, whether it's the principal or the counselor or the teacher. It's someone who should know you and can write the best reference for you. But yeah, I think there's still a little bit of that getting used to the new format, and that's something we'll have to just wait and see how it works out.
Do Sarah or Palak want to add to that at all?
Yeah, it's usually same. I mean, students do ask us, what if we send additional LORs, etc. You can send it if you wish to, but if we will look at it or not, there is no guarantee. So you can send it later through the portal in case you want to send any supporting documents. But because of the sheer volume of application, it gets difficult to look at things that are not asked for. And it has to be, of course, be an academic LOR. So a lot of students also ask this to ask that, what if we've done internships, does those LOR count? Not in the mandate requirement. These could be used as supporting documents sent additionally, but not with the UCAS portal.
Okay, thank you so much, Veer, Sarah, and Palak. I think we've answered several questions in the Q&A as well, and many of them are repetitions. So if any of you have further questions, just look at the Q&A that have already been answered, and all our contact information is here. Before I end the webinar, I'm going to ask each of you one question. What advice do you have for students that are applying this year? Just one piece of advice. Many students have come out of COVID. We've just seen that A-level results haven't been as amazing. People are missing offers. There's a lot of pre-COVID anxiety happening, and students are back in the fold now. And of course, the number of applications to UK universities from India is skyrocketing. So just any one piece of advice that each of you might have for students that are applying this year, that would be fantastic. And then I will have to end the webinar because we're really close to time. So Sarah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would just say, really reflect now what you're enjoying and what you want to consider. If you are looking at the UK, we're much more, specialised and we're focused in our degrees. And so reflect on that and do explore when you're looking at the courses, when you're looking at different universities, make sure you look at the different modules. English at one university is going to be very different to English at another university. And don't just kind of, often we look at the kind of world rankings and think we need to be at the top ones, but really make sure that your next step is going to be something that you really enjoy for you. So do that research, make sure you take that time and enjoy the process.
That's fantastic advice, Sarah. Thank you so much. Palak?
Yeah, I think Sarah's just kept the building blocks right. So, it's very, very important to look at the right fit rather than just getting obsessed with rankings, which a lot of Indian students actually do. Rankings are very, very subjective. So look at the right fit, see what exact course that you want, and then look at the best universities probably that have it. Focus on your personal statements. These are really deal-breaking documents that are there. And yeah, it'll all go well. There's lots of resources available. So, and we're smart enough to kind of use it then. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Palak. And Veer?
So I'll end with two things. I think first, there's a lot of information. Make sure you know where you're getting your information. All of us are accessible, and there's a lot of universities that have teams in India now and in the same time zone. Reach out to us, get the right information. And the second thing that I would say is just remember that it takes time. You will need to draft and redraft, and don't start it. If you're applying for medicine, don't write your essay, on the 14th of October, one day before the deadline or whatever that may be. So I think give it time. It does need, some time to go through its process. And then I think everything else that Palak and Sarah said is very true as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Veer, Sarah, and Palak for joining the Red Pen this evening on this webinar on UK admissions, undergraduate admissions. It's been a fantastic hour. We've shared a tremendous amount of information, and I really appreciate all of you taking the time. And thank you so much to all the attendees for listening to us. I hope you've taken all our information, and you're welcome to reach out to us at any time. Have a good evening. Thank you very much.